All right, so in this lesson today, we're going to actually do the graphs of sine and cosine functions. We're going to actually do them from scratch. Okay? So we're going to use the equations of sine and cosine. Remember, the A represents the amplitude, and B represents the number of cycles between 0 and 2 pi. And the reason why you're using 0 and 2 pi is because of the unit circle. Again, remember that the coordinates here, this is the cosine and the sine for all the points as you go around. And one time around the unit circle is 2 pi. Okay? So, we need to know the variations of the sine and the cosine graphs. So remember, positive sine graph started off at 0 and went up to positive 1, down to 0, down to negative 1, back to 0. That's a positive sine. Negative sine started off at 0 at the origin, went to negative, then to 0, then to positive, then back to 0. Positive cosine started at positive 1, went to 0, went to negative 1, went to 0, went back to positive 1. Okay? And negative cosine started at negative 1, went to 0, went to positive 1, went to 0, went to negative 1. Okay? So you need to know what these variations are so that you can sketch the graphs. Okay? So that's the first goal, is to identify that. Now, the second thing is to be able to plot all these other points. It's actually going to be quite easy, because all we're going to need to know is where it starts, where it stops, and the distance between here and here. We know this is called the period. That's the length of a cycle. So if we can figure out what the period is, we'll know how far it is to plot this point to this point. Now typically that is 2 pi. That's one time around the unit circle. So if we know the distance between here to here, finding these other 3 points is extremely easy, because where's this point compared to those two? It's in the middle. Where's this point compared to these two? It's in the middle. Where's this point compared to these two? It's in the middle. Now, why is it in the middle? It's because of the unit circle. If we start here, this is all the way around, that's 2 pi. Well, this point here represents this point in the middle. This point up here on the unit circle represents this point. This point down here represents that point. Okay? So these are the 5 points that you'll be sketching on all of these, and they represent these 5 points as you go around the unit circle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because remember, this point is 0 and 2 pi. So it represents both. Okay? So those are going to be the 5 points you're going to use to sketch your graph. You're going to need to know what these 5 graphs look like, so that you can then go ahead and sketch the graphs. So we're going to do 3 examples here, and then you'll be on your